turning conflict into connection. Instead of asking what are we fighting about, ask yourself what are we fighting for.
First point about this as being the first time in history where the health and happiness of the relationship determined whether the family stayed together, not the church or some other external pressure. Could this go to explain why people are having less and less kids as well, because they don't feel as secure as they once did? I think this a little bit about because with my partner, I feel like she's said or indirectly said that she'll feel happy and safe to have a child when she feels like more secure in the relationship. And, imagine once upon a time, you just knew that you were going to stay with them regardless.
And you also knew that if you had sex, you had a good chance of being pregnant.
True. Yeah.
That's the first and foremost big change that took place. So, and sex was mostly a woman's marital duty not that long ago. So, I think that many people, the lesser they have, the more children they have. Because children becomes an expression of abundance, of care, of more hands to help, of the riches of a family. People who have less food have more children. It's not people who are more insecure or live in more precarious situations. I don't think that is the reason. I think that there is a certain kind of attitude towards not wanting to give up the comforts of one's life, the freedom, the comings and goings that makes some people not want to have children. And then there's also the fact that for a long time you didn't have a choice, and some people today want to exercise that choice. But you're talking about the love that goes, and you asked me before, one of the subjects that I'm very interested in light of that is conflict. And I called the course that I just created, Turning Conflict into Connection. Because it's easy to look at your situation and then begin to see the strife and the arguments and the bickering and the conflict and to focus on the conflict. But this conflict is occurring because there is a fraught connection. There's a tear in the fabric of connection. And that too, if you say to people, would you run a business that allowed for that kind of conflict and bickering to take place? Nobody. And yet you normalize it in your relationship. You think that that's an okay thing. It's like, if I give you an assignment that we're going to say, I would say, of all the things we talked about, I would love for you to choose 3 things that you're going to do differently, change, and that would improve the relationship. You don't have to go look very far. You've already listed the half a dozen. And then you stay with it. You commit yourself to it. You don't do it contingent on what she does. You don't say, I didn't do that and she still did the same. Give it a time and hold yourself to it. You will see relationship is not something that happens out there. It's actually something that we are very much in charge of creatively, like a business. And by the way, a business is made up of relationships as well. Products, but relationships. Leadership is relationships. It's vision, it's efficiencies, etc. It's operations, but it is also relationships. If those don't work, you can have the best product.
If I want to be a master in conflict resolution in my romantic relationships, man and woman, let's just use that.
2 men, 2 women, then
2 men, 2
everybody.
women. Is there any differences between the way that genders typically approach conflict resolution? Because there's stereotypes, right? That men don't want to talk and that women want to talk.
Yes, but when you have 2 women, there's often one that doesn't want to talk as well.
Okay.
I think there is gender, there is culture, there is linguistics. There's a lot of different things that play themselves out. But it's not, in straight couples, you will attribute certain things to gender that in other couples you will attribute to roles.
Okay.
Because the behaviors are not that different. So there's a whole, I think one of the most important thing is that instead of asking what are we fighting about, ask yourself, what are we fighting for? Like when you go into the bickering around, you see, I'm busy. Why are you bringing up all these stupid questions now what are you fighting for? What she's fighting for is to connect, to have some time with you, to have attention, to not just kind of go through the day, do everything and let this thing kind of die on the vine. There are relationships that are not dead, and there are relationships that are alive.
Tell me the distinction.
Same as a business. Well, you can survive or you can thrive. You can survive and go through the motions, or you can be alive, erotic, radiant, vibrant, vital, creative, curious. It's those experiences, Now, we use eroticism as a life force, not just in the sexual sense of the word. That aliveness gives you energy for a lot of things that you do elsewhere. You would not be here the same way if she wasn't there. And how do you cultivate aliveness? How do you cultivate the erotic is essential. So when I say to people, what are you fighting for? Usually people fight for about 3 things. They fight for trust. They fight to feel like the other person has their back. They fight for recognition, to be valued, and they fight for control. They want to feel that their needs, their beliefs, their expectations have priority too. Control, trust, recognition. Those are probably 3 of the main things people fight for. But it doesn't look like that. It looks like they're fighting over, money or time together, or how often they have sex, or that kind of stuff. So that's a big one about how you deal with conflict. What is productive conflict and what is destructive conflict? Because conflict in itself is intrinsic to all relationships. People fight. People want to have equity. They want to have justice. They want to be heard. They want to, so it's a useful thing. But we all know what fighting looks like that is not useful, and that is destructive, and that harms you, and that you've seen when you are a kid, and that travels with you for the rest of your life. So we know all of those versions too.